Welcome to Romanian Wine True Stories. I started this project because I do think Romania deserves more when it comes to wine and hospitality. Were there any moments when you wondered how to choose a wine, how to taste it? What's the story behind the wine label? Here you will find out interesting things about people who are behind the wine scene, wine producers, sommeliers, wine lovers, wine travelers. What are the necessary skills in order to succeed? What are the toughest moments or challenges these people have faced over the years, and how did they handle them? You will find these answers during our talks with and about Romanian hospitality and wine industry. My name is Alexandra Galbeze, and I invite you to take a glass of wine or even champagne and enjoy our Romanian Wine True Stories. Welcome to Romanian Wine True Stories. This time in France, not in Romania. In Nice, besides us, is Julia Scavo, a Romanian wine lady, I think the best one we Romanians may have. Julia, thank you for accepting me here and for accepting this invitation also. And I always ask my guests to present themselves. So let's start our Romanian Wine True Story, and let's begin our talk with you presenting. Who is Julia Scavo?
Hello everybody, and thank you for coming to my place, to my realm. Who is Julia Scavo? Good question. Before 2002, I was a Romanian student trained in Romania, passed my Romanian and English baccalaureate with a specialty in mathematics and physics. I came to France in 2002 with a scholarship to INSA, which is the National Institute of Applied Sciences in Lyon. Passed my first 2 years there, and then I realized that I've always loved mathematics, pure mathematics, and this is why I went back to my first love, pure mathematics, with a degree. And after the degree came a kind of master's, but a more applied teaching master's, which in France we call CAPES. So for the next 2 years after my first 2 years in engineering, then my degree in mathematics, I spent a very good time learning how to teach the science in French and in English for European classes, for the private teaching system. And when I got into the system, in the real life, I realized that students were not as fond as I was of mathematics and of English. And I was a little bit deceived, because I wanted them to share the same passion with me, telling them mathematics are everywhere, you can use mathematics in your real life, every time, everything you do is based on mathematical calculus. And for me it was obvious, but it wasn't for them. So I started being a little bit deceived and upset with myself. Why is it happening to me, coming from a family where my parents, my grandparents, and even my great-grandparents taught in different levels, either as primary school teachers or secondary school teachers or university level for my father. So for me, teaching was natural, it was like a vocation. Meanwhile, I started being interested in gastronomy because I had my university studies in Lyon, which is a kind of gastronomy capital in France, city of a lot of Michelin stars restaurants, and it is actually squeezed between Burgundy and Rhone Valley with the Beaujolais, which actually touches it. The Savoie and Jura and Bugey are not very far. On the other side you have the Coteau du Lyonnais, so it's really squeezed in the middle of a lot of vineyards. And everything that is related to gastronomy is obviously related to wine. And I started wandering around, searching for cheeses, for typical products, for different traditions, and going on wine fairs too. In the beginning it was more about gastronomy fairs, gastronomy events, and I met Slow Food, which is a gastronomy and very nice association oriented on the product, on traditions, on typical products. So I completely emerged with their ideas, and this brought me to wine, because one of the, let's say, the basis of the French culture is pairing food and wine, so it obviously goes hand in hand. So this is how I arrived to the wine part, and of course I had no training, but I trained myself as a self-taught in the beginning. And one day somebody told me, why don't you try to be a sommelier in a restaurant, or join the Association of Sommeliers in Lyon? So I've never been a sommelier, I've never started this, so how can I do it? So I just apply. And yes, I had some experiences in the beginning in some restaurants, which was very difficult for me as a Romanian and a student. We were not at the time in the European Union. It was very difficult to have contracts. And being deceived by these experiences, I started learning wine on a serious basis. I had some sensory analysis courses in Suze-la-Russe at the wine university, and then I took up a sommelier diploma, but not, let's say, not in a usual way, not going to school, because I wanted to learn a little bit faster.
Okay.
And instead of going to school for 1 year, I just practiced at home for 3 months roughly, passed the examinations with very good credits, and had my sommelier diploma.
Right.
But it was again very difficult to find a job because of my nationality and because I was still a beginner. So this is where I got back to Romania, had some experiences there in a winery, which was John Howard's winery at the moment. I passed my first contest, and I became runner-up of the Romanian championship. And since the one who won didn't actually want to represent Romania for the international competitions, I was pushed and on that path. So yeah, this is how I went into the contest area. I passed my last 10 years or so representing Romania in the international competitions of sommelier, trying to go as far as possible and as high as possible in this field. And meanwhile, I came back to France. I met my husband. We had 2 wonderful kids, and yeah, I kind of had my path in the wine industry, more in hospitality. I had some experiences in the hospitality field in France in the beginning. Then as a young mother, I had to let's say, to give it up a little by little and going more into the educational field, which is actually my vocation, as I said. So it's very important for me to come back teaching wine and spirits, and I'm very glad because people are really sharing their passion with me, not as it used to be for mathematics and English. Yes. And also consulting, training, helping people go as far as possible and as high as possible in this field, as I did. So it really pleases me to see how many people reconvert themselves into the wine business, and how they are very keen on sharing their passion with other people like me.
Yeah. Nice. So your description actually answered the following questions I had for you. When did you decide? What made you decide to follow a career in this field? And now, how do you see this thing, teaching, what you like actually, and the communication with your students, the ones that come, are they only French people, or do you also teach to foreigners?
Yeah, it's kind of mix of them, because I also teach the French national diplomas, like sommelier diplomas, the one I also passed myself. Also trade and marketing diplomas, as well as boutique salesman. We call that caviste in France. So it's a real specialty. It's very different from a sommelier who practices his job in a restaurant. So for people selling wines in in a boutique, in a wine shop. There's a French diplomas where I mainly have French students because they are taught in French with some courses in English, but mainly professional English. And then I didn't mention that, but during this 10 years where I passed all the international competitions, I also took up the WSET path and eventually reached the WSET level 4 diploma, which I obtained in 2020 with distinction, also having an award from the WSET, the Jean Basset Memorial Prize, and the International Wine and Spirits competition trophy for the best score overall in Europe, in the Middle East, in Africa. So this led me to also become a nominated educator for the trust. And I can also teach level 1 and level 2 in wines for the WSET. I also teach for other programs that mainly have international students. So everything that is related to a bachelor in hospitality management, or I also have students in science masters in fragrances and flavors, or in marketing related to fragrances and flavors, because we have a class which is CT for flavors and for perfumes in the area. So I also have international students coming for our specialties here in south of France, which are hospitality, luxury hospitality, but also flavor and fragrances related mostly to the perfume world, but also to spirits, for instance.
Talking about spirits, I know you are a sake sommelier.
Yes.
And a certified trainer in Porto wines.
Yes, definitely.
So how come? How did you choose sake and not other spirits? I don't know.
Well, first of all, I would like to say sake is something in between, let's say, wine and beer. So it's really something that can pair very, very well with food, and especially European food is quite amazing. It's not only for Asian food. So it's something that can be very well related to our, let's say, normal life. While port as well can be a fantastic companion for a whole meal, not only a dessert or cheese wine, as we tend to consider it. So they're really versatile products, and especially they are cultural products. So what I like is to have something related to culture, to history, to everything that can tell a story, and then to have an application in the real life, which can be absolutely possible. But let me tell you about sake. I think my first experience goes back to 2013 when I went to the best sommelier of the world in Tokyo, where I finished 5th in the world. And obviously when we go to a competition in a specific country, we tend to learn as much as possible about its culture, because we never know if we can have products, questions, and applications of that gastronomy and beverage culture in our competitions. So it was absolutely normal to learn about sake, to learn about even other beverages from Japan, like shochu, like tea, and about their food. But sake really was an incredible encounter, because it's such a digest product. A lot of people think it is a strong beverage, it has high alcohol. No, it's around 16 degrees of alcohol, which is quite a low alcohol, even in the fortified ones world. And it is digest, it has a physiological pH, it goes very well with food, it goes very well with cheeses, and as I said, with a lot of European foods and umami-rich foods, where wine can be a little bit tricky at a certain extent. So yeah, this is how I met sake. Then I got in touch with Japanese from the area and from France, who invited me from the beginning to the Kura Master competition, which is a competition for sake judged by French sommelier and people like me, which have a lot of experience in the French business. Yeah, I've been judging in the Kura Master since 2017 continuously, alongside with my husband Julia Scavo, who's also a sake sommelier. And during the lockdown, we said, oh, it would be nice to go a little bit further, push it further, and eventually have a training, because we are self-taught and self-made. But it would be nice to have a more academic basis. So this is how we got into this program during the first lockdown, and or the second lockdown, sorry, and we actually had our certificate. And for the port wine, this is something that really amazed me from the beginning, because, as I said, it's a cultural wine, it's related to history, it has such a deep and rich history, and the landscapes are amazing. If you visit the Douro Valley,
yes,
I think it's one of the...
I totally agree with you.
I would even say it's maybe the most beautiful wine region at this scale, 250,000 hectares, not of vines, but of landscape. I think it's the most beautiful landscape you can have in the world of...
You can have the gastronomy, you can have the wines, you can have the landscape.
Yeah, and the culture and the history. And in 2012, just being pregnant of my first child, I didn't know what to do. It was by the end, I didn't have much work to do, so I went to the Master of Port Selection. I got qualified, and after I gave birth to my child, she was 3 months old, we went to the final phases, and I finished as a runner-up. And I said, I need to do it again, because definitely it's a beautiful competition. We learned so much about a specific product. And I did it again in 2017, just after my second kid, so it was a very similar history. And I got through the qualification, I qualified for the final phases, and I eventually won. And this also gave me the taste to go a little bit further and certify myself, again during the numerous lockdowns of this pandemic we suffered of, and I certified myself by the IVDP, the Institute of Douro and Port Wines, as a certified educator for port, which I think we are only 2 in France to have it.
Wow.
Yeah, one of them being Portuguese of origin, and myself, who I'm not considering myself French either.
Is there no interest in port and wines, or what?
There is. France is the most important importer of port in volume, and except for Portugal, which is not an importer, but in terms of turnover, France has the largest turnover in sales as well for port, and Madeira as well. But France imports a lot of base entry-level categories because it's linked to cuisine. We cook a lot of sauces with port. There's a lot of preparations where we integrate port and Madeira too, which is kind of a pity if we don't really pair and accompany those dishes with a port or a Madeira. And also because French people enjoy port as an aperitif. It's not a real pairing for food or for desserts or for cheeses, as you can find this in the UK, for instance, or in Portugal. But they really have it as an aperitif with ice cubes, or served with some melon and some ham, some cured ham, which is maybe not the best way to enjoy it, but it's very typical in France to see this, unfortunately. And we really need to educate, especially professionals, into this direction. So the Master of Port competition, which exists since 1988, is one of this basis of the educational programs. Other programs consist in going into schools, as I also do on an average base, because I'm an educator and a teacher, and teach students about port and the pairings, and work with chefs and do port wine dinners, if we can say so, or port dinners. And another one is by the Certified Port Educator program, so really having an academic and standard base to better teach people about port. Of course, with the WSET certifications, there's a lot of help in this direction, because the fortified wines are very important in all the levels of the WSET certification. So even French people that go in this direction will have a normal base of education about port, Madeira, and other fortified. Okay. So it's really developing. But yes, we import a lot of wine. We don't have enough education to push its use to the pinnacle as I would like to.
Yes. So, what about Romanian wine here? I mean, Romanian wine, how is it perceived here? Taking into consideration your expertise, your training expertise. So, how do you see Romanian wines here in France, but not only here in France, abroad? I mean, what are the varieties that are most appreciated? And do French people love Romanian wine? Do they found Romanian wine here?
Well, it's a bit difficult. I started being involved into promoting Romanian wine by 2013, when I started going back to Romania for various purposes. In the beginning, just visiting my family, but then when you visit your family, they always get a bottle of Romania or local wine on the table, and together with my husband we said, oh, let's go and visit one winery or another, let's go and buy some wines. My father sent me some bottles, so I started building like a small collection, and by 2014 I think I organized my first Romanian wine tasting here for Sommelier. We had like 35 bottles of Romanian wines from here and there, either brought by ourselves or sent by my father or by some wineries. And it was indeed appreciated. I had a small conference in the beginning just to explain the terroir, the varieties, and the developments in the wine business since the revolution. It was welcomed in a very positive way. Then I was asked by the Corsican Association of Sommelier to have a real conference with focusing on different indigenous varieties, and we had that in 2015. Then I went to Stockholm, to London, to numerous towns and capitals in Europe, presenting Romanian wine, which is actually rather unknown in Romania, because I did it in a very personal, in a very human way. Let's say I didn't advertise that too much. I just asked the people, send me some bottles, let's have some conferences. So unfortunately there is not too much enthusiasm there was at that time not too much enthusiasm from local authorities, agricultural ministry, or people involved in let's say specific authorities about wine, in promoting that at a larger scale. So we stayed like local actions, local events. And then I started going more and more to Romania, visiting, getting into contact with wineries, having tasting there, but also here, and developing in this direction, writing about Romanian wine, writing articles, tasting notes. So I think now is something I would say I'm rather specialized in this field too, together with sake, with port, with champagne as well, because I'm also a big fan of bubbles and champagne and sparkling wines in a very let's say general way. But yeah, Romanian wine is one of my specialties in the fields where I'm really getting in. How is it perceived here? When people taste Romanian wines, they love it, they enjoy it, they say, oh, it's fantastic, I would like to have that in my restaurant, in my boutique, in my home. But then the surprise is that it's very difficult to get them here. It's like people would like to export from Romania, but there is some point where they say, wait a moment, we are almost our only customer. 98% of the Romanian wine is drunk locally, so let's keep some for our own sake. And it's like a borderline behavior, because Romanians want to export, but at a certain extent they would also like to keep their wine. And what reaches other countries are a lot of entry levels. I mean, there are countries that import quite a lot, like Germany, like UK, even the Netherlands have a good import facilities, China of course, and some countries really have a serious import, but they have private labels for their retails, for their brands, and this is how the Romanian wine actually gets diluted in a kind of entry-level trend. Unfortunately, I would really love to see more and more of the original labels in restaurants, in wine shops, in specialized boutiques, and promoted by people who really know what they're talking about. And I think France has a different philosophy. The day when it opens to France, they will really promote it in this direction, and not only through retail and community shops, those that are made for the diaspora, because our consumers, the best consumers for Romanian wines, will not be the Romanians from the diaspora. I think there will be the foreigners from that country, best ambassadors, because Romanians will also drink French wine. In the case of France, they come here not only for drinking Romanian wine, but also opening to the French culture, and for the French is a real curiosity. So yeah, I would like to push more into this direction of importing better qualities, going on the medium and high level, and even high ends. The problem is that our medium level wines are a little bit tricky. I will explain myself. The entry level is very good, it's very competitive. You find fantastic value for money in the entry level. High end, high level are fantastic. We can really find beautiful things that's worth Michelin stars restaurants and wine shops. Problem is the price is a little bit higher compared to other competitors. And on the mid segment, the quality is not as relevant overall. You know, some wineries can have very good mid levels, but this is not a case for everybody. So it's like they do not push this segment as much as they could, and they rely on the entry level for export. They have their top cuvée for inner market and for their top consumers, and a little bit for exports too if they want. But yeah, I think Romania should really get more constant on that mid level for everybody, for inner market and for the export, because if you want to test a product, you will definitely test it more on the mid level, not on the high or the entry level.
Exactly, exactly. So that was actually one of the answers for the next question I had for you. What would be the things that you would like to be improved, or I don't know, there's a little bit of space, or it should be changed in a better way.
Yes,
so
definitely.
This, and what else? The wineries, I don't know, and Romanian hospitality maybe.
Yeah, there are plenty of ideas. One of the ideas would be that producers get together. This is something I think is very specific to Romania in general. After the communist era, we had a lot of difficulty in getting together, because communism was putting everything together, cooperation, diluting the sources and the identities. So I think people are a bit afraid of getting together, cooperating, and this is what lacks in the field primarily. Having cooperatives in a region, it's not a bad thing. Having a cooperative of Drăgășani, a cooperative in Dalumare, or even more than one in certain regions, because this would, let's say, solve the problem of those wines that are produced by people in the area and sold on the board of on the edge of the national way. So in plastic bottles, for instance. I think having a cooperative is like sending all those grapes that are unvalued by this kind of production, and valuing them under the same label. And it's not a shame, it's not going back to communism. A lot of countries have cooperatives and it works really well, like in France, for instance. So getting into this cooperative system, but in a very healthy way, on a very healthy basic, of course, not going back to communism. Also having more and more winemaker associations like in Dragășani and Delumare, and associations that really promote and work together for this sake, driving people from the main towns that are situating around the wine regions, and inviting them to taste, to see, to experience something new, and then they go back and spread the news and more people would come. So I think having associations, and then the hospitality business, of course, it develops more and more in the capital, in Bucharest, in other towns like Cluj, Timișoara, Iași, Constanța, Brașov. I think these are key towns for the hospitality business, where you have trendy fine dining restaurants, nice hotels that offer hospitality facilities of a European standard, and also wine bars that develop more and more, and wine shops.
They started to open more and more wine bars.
That's what we noticed.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we noticed before pandemic, and even during pandemic. We got back to Romania last year, and we had a surprise to see that people really go to the wine bar, to the wine shop, to the restaurant. But this is very specific in these towns and cities. I would like to see this development, for instance, in my hometown Craiova, which is a little bit retreated and restrained in this field, and other towns that are quite important in terms of number of inhabitants, but do not develop that much in this area. So give an interest to people to open more and more of these hospitality facilities, especially if the town is situated in the nearby of a wine region, which is the case for Craiova. It is not far from Dragășani, it's not far from Segarcha and Oprișor and Mehedinți, and all this part of in most Oltenia. So this would be another idea of development. And then I think specific ministries like the agricultural ministry should take care more of promoting the wine abroad, not only in the country. That means we should have a wine board, like countries like Austria or Germany or Spain having a real wine board. Of course, we have the ONVPV website, but it's not yet translated in English, or only the first pages are translated in English. And I have a lot of people interested in where to find information about Romanian wine, and I say, okay, I will help you with translation, but not all the people will call Julia Scavo for that. So it's very difficult not to have a reliable database translated at least in English, if not in French, plus some other current languages. Another idea would be to cooperate again, to get together, but to go on wine fairs like ProWine, like Vinexpo, which we do, but on a more regular base. We do that once in I don't know how many years. Okay, we have pandemic in the middle, but let's have a common stand where everybody's happy to be together with his neighbors or her neighbors, and promote our wines, be happy and be proud to promote our wines with brochures translated at least in English, and a lot of informations, maps and everything, USB sticks, everything needed to promote, to spread the information. Another idea would be from the part of the National Sommelier Association in Romania. Yes, we have a National Sommelier Association in Romania, and I am part of it because I represented Romania in the international competitions. Their choice was not to send me to represent Romania anymore. I think I was not a bad ambassador, but if we don't want to send me anymore, let's train serious candidates so that Romania stays on that position where I brought it, third step of the European competition, twice the 5th position in the world, 7th position for the last championship. I've done Best Sommelier of the World 2019. I think we should seriously train our sommeliers, and I'm there to help. The idea is that people in the business should accept my help.
Should accept.
Yeah.
Sometimes in order to evolve, you have to admit that you need help.
Exactly.
So
and,
asking
I'm
for
a
help.
woman, I'm a lady, so it's sometimes difficult for a country like Romania, where there's a very masculine tradition about wine, and I think in the Latin countries there's a very masculine tradition in the beginning, but just to open to a more feminine approach, and we now have a lot of female winemakers which are very skillful. I think we have a lot of ladies in the wine business, globally speaking.
Yes, but still more men than women.
Exactly. But I think that the first Romanian master of wine is a she, and well, I wouldn't say but I'm among the first to have a DipWSET with distinction and having awards from the WSET, and I'm a female professional in the field, and I see more and more of this female from Romania having fantastic results in the WSET, in different fields, in enology, in the winemaking. So yeah, that should better accept that even if I'm a female, I can help them if they don't want me to represent Romania, because maybe they want a male sommelier to represent the Romanian Sommelier Association in the next competition. Let's help him. Or if we find a lady, let's help her.
Yes.
Let's train and do something for the educational system in Romania. Fortunately, we have the WSET courses that work very well in Romania, but this is not to train sommeliers. We don't have, or as far as I know,
a certain school for the sommeliers.
There are private schools in collaboration with Swiss or French institutes that got into the market.
Yes.
But let's make something accessible for everybody. Yes. I mean, if you become a waiter, let's have specific courses for wine too, even if it's not called the Lausanne or Escoffier Institute, even if it's just a professional vocational school in a certain town, let's have specific courses even for waiters, so that they become better wine waiters, and maybe one day they will be interested in becoming a real sommelier. This is what lacks a lot. We lack sommelier in the hospitality business because we don't have a specific training system.
Yes. Yeah. You were talking earlier about that Romanian specialists don't accept your help. So they don't admit that they would need any help. Was it hard for you as a woman to succeed in this wine world? Especially that we're talking that you have a job and you're a trainer here in France. Was it hard?
Yes, it was hard because I'm a mother of 2 kids as well. So this complicates a little bit the affair. In the beginning, I was not a mum, so maybe the first competitions were a little bit more easier for me to pass my time learning, tasting, traveling. Then it got more and more complicated. I had to go back to teaching, which is not a bad thing. I think I'm very happy with that. So I had a difficulty because I was not a sommelier on the floor. And when we have a sommelier competition, of course, you have practical tests, you have practical exams. And this was like a handicap for me. So sometimes I had to go back and do some part-time job in restaurants just to have a little bit of practice. But it was difficult in the beginning. We're still very few to compete. I think out of 60, 70 that we are now in the best sommelier of the world. 60 to 70 depends on years and on the number of selected competitors. I think we are less than a dozen female, between 7 and 10 on average. Some reach the semifinals, around 2 or 3 female sommeliers in the semifinals. And what is very encouraging is that for the last finals, there's always been a female in the finals. Since 2013, every single European, international, Pan-American, they always have females involved and even winning this competition. A little bit less in the Asian and Australia, Oceania competition. But yeah, every single competition promoted a female on in the final. So this is very encouraging. We also see this in France with competition for, especially for students. It is a little bit harder when you go to the best sommelier of France or the best craftsman in France, where we have Pascaline Lepelletier, who is the first woman to have won the best craftsman in France and the best sommelier of France. So this is historical. I'm the best. I'm the first woman to have won the Master of Port.
Wow.
Which is also considered to be an important French competition. So these are exceptions, but you can find more and more female participation in students' competitions. That means before they found a family, before they become mothers, if they wish, they have more time to spend for the competitions and eventually winning some of them, because there are young sommelier ladies who won students' competitions and since say now 3 or 4 years, so we see a lot of them acceding to the finals and eventually winning. So it's becoming more regular. It's still very difficult because we have I think we have a style when we arrive in a service, when we arrive in a tasting. We have a certain very meticulous style, very analytical, which is a bit different from a male point of view. We also dress in a different way. We don't always fit in a sommelier attire, so we sometimes have to adjust and compromise on that side. And in most of the competitions we have scores for your attire. So if you don't wear the classic attire, you might lose some points on that. So this is something we know about. We try to be as neutral as possible, but also showing our feminine side, which is normal.
Of course.
Yes. As for Romania and the Romanian Sommelier Association, I think they accepted me for 10 years. They struggled with accepting it for the last 10 years or so. Sometimes difficult for them to accept, of course. So I think I'm the only sommelier who had to pass by selections to accede to representing Romania.
Wow.
Yes. We don't organize a selection in Romania like France does.
Okay.
In France, you have to be a winner of the best sommelier of France, best young sommelier of France, or the best craftsman in France, and then those winners participate in a selection, which is absolutely
the best of the best.
The best of the best. We don't have that in Romania.
Maybe we should have it.
We should have it. I encourage that. I said I can judge, create subjects, organize this selection, because this is how we can bring the best of the best to the European or the international competition. And continue speaking about Romania on the international sommelier scene. And we don't have this yet, but whenever it came to my participation, they said, okay, go and participate in the Central European competition together with other fellows, and I beat them, I won it. Okay, go and participate in the Balkans with another one. So I finished second. I was the runner-up. He had another classification. So this is how they entrusted me, and it was a way to become more legitimate, if I can say, because we don't have a specific selection. We can win our competition in Romania, but winning a competition in your country, which has more than 50% in your native language, is not a way of selection for a European competition or international, which is all and completely in a foreign language, distinct for your mother tongue. These are things that should be improved, I think. And if we want to have a very strong sommelier, we should improve education, training, certifying our sommeliers with the ASI international diploma, which my husband and I have. We are among those who have it. I think I'm the second in Romania to
And
have
I think
it.
we would have been lucky to have you as trainers.
Yes.
And that's how this, through training, studying, I think only through this way the others may also be encouraged, and
Exactly.
because it would be a competitive spirit, and only this way you could improve and improve and improve.
Of course, knowing that I haven't, and I say it very seriously, I haven't I retreat myself from the competition officially. So I am still okay if they want me back in the team. The day I will retreat from competing, I would like to become a trainer, like a football player, like a sportsman or sportswoman who retreats from a competition, and if he or she has very good results, usually they become a trainer. So I'm not yet retreated, and my dream is to represent Romania in the Best Sommelier of the World 2023. My husband will represent Monaco in this competition, because they have a selection in their country. But yeah, I'm still open if there is a selection, and if they want me to bring Romania maybe as far as I can, but
Hope this message will go further,
Yeah.
and the ones who are watching us, they pay attention and should listen.
yeah.
And no further comments. Okay, so what are the qualities in order to succeed in this field, Julia?
Numerous qualities. I think curiosity is one of the main qualities, because if we're not curious about learning, discovering new grapes, new terroirs, new countries, we cannot succeed in the field. Then having a good memory, I think it's very important to memorize and to learn lots. So training it as much as possible. It's like a muscle. It's like anything that can be trained. If you stop reading, learning, of course it becomes a little bit less muscled, and you can lose training. So yeah, having a very good memory, which includes sensory memory, because we have to memorize a lot of sensory molecules and wine profiles and spirits profiles or other beverages, as we have to practice the blind tasting. So having a very good memory for everything, and also being, let's say, quite modest. I'd say we can never know everything. It develops at such a speed that you will never be able to be updated in every single aspect of the field, in wines, beverages, cigars, waters, teas, coffees, in gastronomy, and everything related to the field. So even if you become a best sommelier of whatever, you should stay modest, somehow humble, and saying, yeah, there is still a lot of things to learn, to work on your tasting. You will never be able to blind taste every single glass of wine, and you'll never be able to identify it at 100% in every situation. So this is, I think, one of the best way, staying humble, modest, and this is how you can keep updated and continue learning and improving and passing by different selections, different diplomas, certificates, and so on. Otherwise, you just say, okay, I'm self-sufficient, I'm the best of whatever, and you stop and you're lost.
Yes. You were talking earlier about sensorial memories.
Mm.
How do you train that? How do you do that in order to succeed in this field? Because it's very important, this part.
Yeah, continuously tasting every day, blind tasting a lot as well.
Okay.
Smelling everything, not only the wine but also the foods. Everything I put on my tongue is always smelled before. Teaching this to my kids as well. Whenever we go on a market or wherever, well, with the masks it was a little bit more complicated to do that, but yeah, getting to sense as much as possible, all the products, flowers, everything in the nature, herbs, spices. We used to go to Grasse. We have the chance to be very close to Grasse and go and smell perfumes, try to detect the molecules inside, read a lot, understand the chemistry actually, which is behind the wine. So when you start understanding that every single molecule in the wine is actually a chemical molecule which comes naturally in the wine process, but understand how it comes there, why is it there, which is its formula, why is it related to a certain fruit, plant, spice, etc. It really gets easier and the puzzle starts to get completed. So yeah, learning not only to taste in a professional way like a sommelier, but also reading through enology books and understanding the chemistry which is behind the wine, and then applying it. And whenever you smell something, you think, oh, this molecule is there in this fruit or spice or herb, and we find it in a certain grape variety because it can be there because of the variety, because of the winemaking process, or because of post-fermenting processes. Yeah.
Yes. What was the hardest thing, I mean the most challenging thing throughout your professional career? And you had to face it?
Maybe combining my...
Because I'm asking you this because you have many achievements.
Yeah.
As I told you, you are a Romanian wine lady, and you have many achievements, but these achievements are based on hard work, hard studying. So it's not all about, you just go there and you win prizes, and so forth and so on. So I'm sure that you had some difficult moments throughout your career. So when was it? How did you overcome it?
Yeah, well, one of the difficult moments, well, it's a very happy moment as well, because when I became a mother, I had to accept that, okay, I will not work on the floor on a regular basis. I will not train in the same way as other competitors. I will have this handicap of, okay, pushing my theoretical learning and my tasting knowledge to the pinnacle, but when it comes to training on the floor, it's a little bit more difficult. So this is a major, let's say, difficulty I had to encounter, which comes from a very happy achievement, which are my kids. But I think one of the most difficult moments in my competitor career was 2013 in the semi-finals of the best sommelier of the world. And well, I did a very good questionnaire in the morning, then I passed to the tasting portion, and it was very well, and then the identification of spirits, and then the pairing, and then came the service part. And I had a very simple task, let's say, decanting a bottle of red Douro wine and serving that for 8 people, so very comfortable timing, and for 8 or 10. And well, I actually broke the whole tray of glasses. I passed by a very narrow pass, and all my glasses went down. You should imagine that they were very heavy, like 475 grams each glass. And I'm quite tiny. Having all those 8 or 10 glasses on a tray is like having 5 kilos on your tray. After a whole day of competition, I've chosen to pass in a very narrow passage, and at that moment everything collapsed actually, because I knew there are big chances I will not reach the finals. And well, I re-established all my capacities. I cleaned up the mess, I took another tray, I put another some other glasses on the tray, I decanted, I served it, I didn't finish the task. And that moment I said, I'll never ever be competing again. It is such a shame doing that on on the stage in front of so many people that it's impossible for me to go back competing. I will never overcome that. And that particular competition was the first time when our dearest and late Gérard Basset, best sommelier of the world, master of wine, master sommelier, all the achievements possible, he was the greatest of the greatest. He decided, as president of the technical committee, to give the classification, the ranking, because otherwise I would have never known which ranking I had. Yes. I would have been between 4th and 12th with that accident on the stage, with that shameful accident on the stage. So I could have I think I wanted to give up not only competing but working in the wine business. Wow. And the moment he announced my 5th position in the world out of, I think we were 63 to pass the competition, I said, wait a moment, it's not that bad. It's not that shameful. I'm 5th in the world. I'm very close to the podium. Yes. And this is where I said, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to go and compete again. And autumn 2013, I reached the finals of the European competition and I finished 3rd. I'm the first Romanian to get into a final of a international competition, let's say. So this was one of the most difficult moments, and I think it was crowned by that achievement, by that award, the Gérard Basset Memorial Award. I think it's the best and the most beautiful award I could have had. Gérard Basset, who actually helped me never give up, and I will never give up. If I can compete again, I will. And having that award a few years after.
Wow, so that's it. Such an incredible story. Oh, wow. I'm happy you haven't given up, and you're still here in the wine business. What about the Romanian wine and food service?
Oh,
that's a question I also want to ask.
Yeah, it somehow joins what we've already said about training our professionals in the field. Not only training them, of course, having a WSET certification is a very good achievement, and hopefully it exists in Romania and it's gaining more and more recognition, but also training sommeliers, because if you are a DipWSET, you are not automatically a sommelier. You're a wine expert, you're a wine professional, wine consultant, trainer or teacher if you want to, but you are not a sommelier. I am firstly a sommelier, and then I went through the WSET, so I combined both of them. So having schools where we train people to wine service, food pairing, wine knowledge would be the first major step. Then of course I think the tourism ministry should encourage. Yes. Again, we had a law, as far as I remember, by the beginning of the millennia, where all the 4 stars plus hotels should have had a sommelier in their restaurant, which then, this was compulsory by the time, but then it became only recommended, and when something is recommended, it's not compulsory anymore. So this is where we lost our enthusiasm for having sommeliers in the top fine dining restaurants. So I think having some legal frame for sommeliers in the top restaurants would be very encouraging for people working in the business, and then of course encourage them with normal wages for this kind of job, or you have to be updated, where you have to travel to taste, to be able to list wines, not only to serve wine. I think a sommelier should not only be a wine waiter. Of course we should have wine waiters in restaurants, but a sommelier should also be a person that creates wine programs, that lists the wines, that works with the chef and with the owner, if he's not the owner, him or herself, and creating a wine list that is the perfect image of his concept about that restaurant. So yeah, we need to train people, we need to encourage them, through different exchanges with restaurants abroad. I think that could be interesting to have a kind of
to see you know, something like best practices.
Exactly, and like we have different programs for students, like we have Erasmus and
exactly.
Erasmus
programs are not only for students but also for teachers.
Exactly, and teachers should come abroad and see how it happens in the hospitality in France, in Italy, in the UK, in the Scandinavian countries where it's developing more and more. So having these programs both for teachers and for students would be very helpful to have excellent professionals and teach them a kind of not only theoretical knowledge but a kind of know-how and what we also call in France a kind of savoir-être, how you should be with your guests, how you should behave. Not only being a top professional knowing a million of information about wine, but also behaving in a very kind and attentioned way with your guests, accompanying them, help them choose the wine and best pairing, but also knowing how to accompany them through wine tours, wine visits. Okay, you are here in Bucharest, know that 60 or 70 kilometers further north you will have the Darumare region, so I can guide you, make appointments for you and send you for a wine visit, for a wine trip if you're interested while you stay in our hotel. So yeah, things like this that are part of this savoir-être, knowing how to behave, how to be very gentle, very attentioned. And that's hospitality, actually. That's why we call it hospitality. It's a package. It's not only selling wine, being happy that the customer will leave you a tips and maybe he or she will never come back again. I think this would be this respectful manner in welcoming people like you do it at home. It's absolutely normal when I welcome somebody to offer him a glass of water, to offer him or her an aperitif if it's aperitif time, information where touring around the place where I live. So it's a package, as I said. I think there's so many there are ideas and we only need to have this enthusiasm and a little bit of help from the legal frame in order to...
some things need to be done always with the help of the authorities.
Exactly.
Otherwise we are going and we develop to an extent. From there they need to involve a little bit. Yes. What Romania should learn from France, except for this part of savoir-être, and what France should learn from Romania? Because as we know, as in our lives we meet people, some of them they rest with us, some of them just leave, but we meet them in order to gain some experience. The same here. What Romania should learn from France and what France maybe should learn from Romania?
I think what's very interesting in France is this cooperation spirit. I think Romania should learn from this get-together enthusiasm and spirit, better cooperate, without thinking we will get back to communism and those past values. Just improve this association spirit, which can be interesting in the wine business to have cooperatives, to have associations of winemakers, but also in the hospitality to better know your colleagues and get together. As I said, our Romanian Sommelier Association is kind of poor nowadays because it actually spread due to different interests of each and everyone. We now have, I think, 2 or 3 associations in the field, which are not all agreed and certified in Europe or in the international frame. So let's bring them back together, have one association, and it should be a very good one, a very competitive one. People from the cuisine field, from the pastry, I know there is an association in the field, so make it shine a little bit more, that we know there is a national team that represents Romania in the cuisine competitions, and we had a very good result in the, I think, Olympiads or international competitions 1 or 2 years ago. So spread this news. We are very proud of that in France. France has a best craftsman competition. That means people working with their hand, people that are valued for their skills. Let's value that. I think Romania should learn from France that working on the floor as a waiter, working in a cuisine, even washing the dishes, it's noble somehow.
Of course.
Even those people that are housekeeping or cleaning or doing things only with their hands are valuable. So this is something we neglect in Romania, and we should not only be sensitive to high certificates, degrees, diplomas, PhD theses, and which are fantastic achievements, but also saying, okay, if I have a very good waiter, it's worth millions, and if I have a good dishwashers, it's compulsory to have that. If I don't have it, I won't have good, well-cleansed glasses and well-cleansed dishes. So
the rest of the service won't be perfect.
Exactly. So yes, these are things we should learn from France, and it doesn't mean we will go back to communism.
Of course.
It doesn't mean we will value only those manual skills. We can value both of them, those working manually and those working with their intellect. What should France learn from Romania? I think there is something about, something I confront myself with, is that we like to learn a lot of things in Romania.
Yes.
In France, we get specialized. We only take one field, even if it's very narrow, and
we stick on them.
Yeah, we stick on it. Exactly. And we become the best of the best in that field.
Yes.
But we don't see anything that is outside that field.
Yes.
And it's very difficult. When I started teaching mathematics, I was talking with other teachers, secondary school teachers, high school mainly. The guy who was teaching history and geography knew only about history and geography. Those teaching French, they only knew about French literature and grammar, but they couldn't quote anything related to other subjects. So it's very sad to be only specialized and do not see the beauty of everything that is outside the field. So this is something I struggle with, and my kids struggle with, because in France we say, yeah, you should be in the average, you should be there, like a train on its rails, like a horse that has, like, protections not to see around. So yeah, this is something France should learn from Romania, because we like to not only to focus on our specialty in our field, we can be very good in our field, but we can also know about history, geography, literature, medicine, things about life, about culture, and I think learning from Romania would be very good, and from Romanians, and not only saying, no, you're not like the French, you don't stick to your specialty. How comes that you know things about history and about other fields than your wine or mathematics? Yeah, that would be less frustrating. I was very frustrating to be told that.
Wow.
Yeah.
But wine is more than just wine, just a simple beverage. You need to know some things about history, about the terroir, the geography. So there are so many things you need to learn about. Yes.
Yeah, it's very funny when I start talking about the Rhone Valley, for instance, and nobody knows, or very few know, that there were popes in Avignon when we talk about Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And how comes they've all learned about history, but maybe they do not relate it. Maybe they learned there were popes in Avignon, and there is the Palais des Papes, so it's a very beautiful, fantastic building. But maybe they do not link it to wine and say, how comes that you know that, and how comes that you know who is Louis XIV, and how comes that you know about Charlemagne? And well, because I've always been interested in history and culture and geography and so on.
Yeah. Interesting things, Julia. It was a pleasure.
Same for me.
In the end, if there's something you would like to say or to recommend to those who are watching us now?
Yes, just stay tuned, because there are things that will happen very soon in the wine field in Romania. Mainly, my husband and I, together with Elizabeth Gabe, Master of Wine, we are co-authoring a cycle of books. We will also be joined by a fourth author, and together with Wine Lovers Romania, we have joined this project, which is Provero.
Yes.
And I think this will be a very nice development, which joins what all we've talked about, having documentation in English first and maybe translated in French in a very close future, and maybe in Romania too, about our wine regions. So 7 books will be issued in this field, talking about Romanian wine regions, dedicated to people that go into the vocational training, but also to embassies, consulates around the world, and
in order to promote Romanian wines as much as possible.
Yeah, and we hope helping the producers in this way. This is the main issue, of course. Learning about Romanian wine is fantastic, but also help those producers that are getting to the export market. This is our message. So yeah, stay tuned, and it'll come soon in the market.
So wonderful. Thank you, Julia.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me here, for accepting me here. It was a real pleasure, and very honored to be having this interview with you. And stay tuned. Enjoy our Romanian Wine True Stories.
Yeah.
Sante.
Cheers.
Cheers, noroc.